I've been in corporate life for over 20 years, and I decided it was time to do my own thing. I knew it would be a big change, but I was used to change, so I wasn't fazed by that. I was going to find a career that was really going to showcase my talents. I'd learned a lot in corporate life, and I'd experienced lots of things, and I was sure there were loads of businesses that were going to want to work with me. You see, I've learned two things in corporate life particularly. I'd learned to be a generalist, so whatever got thrown at me, I've made a decent fist of it. I'd learned to be a chameleon, so I could fit in anywhere and get on with anybody. So basically that meant I could do anything and be anybody. What could go wrong? Now you may think, well, I had a vision as well, that I would become this sage-like figure in town, and I would go around from business to business, person to person, spreading my pearls of wisdom to the grateful acolytes at my feet. Now you may think this is a touch of arrogance. I would rather say naivety, because like stupidity is a really ugly word, isn't it? And things didn't work out exactly as I planned. So I'm going to share with you a couple of things that happened along the way and what I found, what I learned from that. So I did some research. I didn't know what I was going to do. I did some research and decided to buy a franchise. I thought this was a great idea, because if you buy a franchise, someone's figured it out for you. They've worked it out, they've written the manual, and all you've got to do is follow the instructions, and you'll be successful. What could be easier? Of course, if I'd have had one iota of self-awareness at the time, I would have realised that my success in corporate life was built entirely around me being the one that figured things out. I wrote the manual. I'd have also realised that I don't really follow other people's instructions, and I never open their manuals. But one of the instructions I did follow was to go networking, because anybody who starts a business, that's the advice you get, honestly. Go networking, meet people, get business. I'd never done it before, but it's only meeting people. I mean, how hard could it be? So I threw myself into it. I went to everything. I went to BNI, NRG, FSP. I was a networking tart. The only trouble was that for me it was not working. I wasn't getting business. I wasn't making these mysterious relationships. I was just getting exhausted. But I applied my usual approach to things. If you get a problem, ignore it, put your head down and push on harder. I went to more networking, more exhausted. Because what I now know is that I'm actually a bit of an introvert. I like one-to-one conversations, I like to get into deep, meaningful discussions. So going into a room of 100 people all slapping business cards on each other's heads, well, that was my idea of hell, really. And the other thing we found out is actually, if it's before 8:30 and I haven't had a cup of tea, I'm not really human. So why did you go to BNI when I had to be there at 6:15? Anyway, after a couple of years of spectacular failure, me and the franchise, we parted ways. And I started to get involved with other people's business ideas and projects, because I was sure this was going to work. You see, in corporate, I'd always been really good at projects. I could work with anybody, even people I didn't like. And I was really good at driving projects through and making sure they delivered. But for some reason, these projects didn't seem to work out like that. They all ended in, disaster and recriminations, or just petered out. Because it turns out that outside of corporate life, you can't work with anybody. You've got to find people that you actually get on with. And outside of corporate life, people have choices. So if you put a bit of pressure on them, they don't rise to the occasion. They bugger off and do something else. But every time when these things failed, the usual methodology applied. Ignore it, put your head down, push harder. The only problem was, I was pushing harder and harder. I didn't seem to be going anywhere. Something had to change. I sort of realised that, or felt that, everything I'd learnt in corporate life, everything that had worked for me in corporate life, was exactly wrong in this situation. And that's when I decided something had to change. And the thing that surprised me was it was actually me. I remember the turning point. I was reading an article about a cricketer called Mike Yardy who'd come back from an England tour because he'd had mental health problems. He'd come back the day before he was due to play in the World Cup final, which would have been the pinnacle of his career. Why couldn't he just carry on for a couple of days? And this article was explaining that if you have mental health challenges, they have physical effects, and that would have affected his performance. And I started reading, listed about a dozen of these physical effects, and I was reading them through. He said, disturbed sleep. Well, yes, about that, I suppose. Stomach upsets. Well, time. Heart palpitations. Yes. And I went down, and I said yes to everyone. I realised I'd had all of these physical expectations. When I got to the bottom, I nearly shouted bingo. So that's when I realised that I had a problem and I had to get some help. And I started working with a therapist, and I learned how to identify my false thinking patterns and how to take steps to change them. I learned to recognise and manage my emotions. You see, in corporate, you don't really do emotions. I mean, you can have them, just don't bring them to work. So I sort of dismissed them, and it turns out emotions are really important. They tell you all sorts of things about yourself. Who knew? I also learned that you need to put yourself first. And again, you don't do that in corporate. I mean, corporate, the job comes first. With family and friends and pets and responsibilities. You come way down the list. Definitely below pets. But it turns out that old adage about putting the oxygen mask on yourself first, it's really true, it's really important. And I also learned that I need to look after my emotional well-being. I need to be with people that get me and understand me and support me and know what I'm going through. And I've been fortunate the last year to become part of a group like that. We did a course together and we stayed together helping each other. And that's why I'm here today. Because Tanya, who spoke last time, is in that group, and when she sat down, she said, "You're next." So it turns out at the beginning I thought I was on a quest to find a new career, but that wasn't it at all. It actually turns out I was on a quest to find myself, the real me. You see, that person who left corporate, that generalist, that chameleon, he didn't know who he was. It didn't matter in corporate, because nobody cares who you are, they just care what you do. And outside of corporate, it turns out it's exactly the other way around. People want to see the real you. And in some ways, that's a quest that we're all on, isn't it? We're all on a journey to find our true selves and sharpen the world as our true selves. So I'm just going to share with you the 3 things that I think you need to focus on this quest. The first one is that you need to know yourself. So when I started out, I didn't have a clue. I did what I thought I wanted to do. I did what people told me I should do, and it didn't really work for me. But now, I choose to do things that actually fit with my personality. I'm working with the grain of myself rather than against it. And that makes it so much easier and so much more effective. The second thing is to love yourself. You are your only resource. You've got to look after yourself, because if you fall over, there's nobody else to do the work. And you have to turn off that harsh inner critic that we've all been taught to have in ourselves, and actually give yourself the love and kindness that you naturally give to others. And the third thing is to ask for help, because none of us can make this journey alone. And besides, it's much more fun traveling with friends, isn't it? So I haven't completed my quest. Obviously it's a lifetime's endeavour. But I've been on this strange, extremely lengthy and unexpected journey that's taken me to some weird and wonderful and occasionally frightening places. But strangely enough, I have sort of achieved that original destination. You see, in our little support group, they've given me a nickname. They call me Colin, the Sage. So I guess after all this faffing around, I must really know my owners after all.